Welcome to the Photography Opinion Podcast. We discuss all things photo, video, and camera related. I'm Ben Lucas.
And I'm Stuart Marlantis.
And this is Photo Op. Hello, podcast listeners. Today we're talking about culling, or rather the process of going through all of your images and picking the best ones, kind of how we do it, how we go about it, getting into a little bit nitty-gritty. This is going to be a little more tutorialized probably than the conversations we've been having, but yeah, that's kind of what we're going into today. We did do an episode on do you delete your photos where we kind of touched. That was our first episode, right? Very first episode.
Gotta be close, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, don't go watch it. We were probably real bad back then. But we kind of touched on it of these are the kinds of things that I do delete versus don't delete. But I thought this would be a more interesting topic to dive into because a couple years back, I was interviewing other photographers to see kind of what issues they had with their editing workflow, because I wanted to put together a workflow guide that was here's how to save yourself time and sanity and get your life back. And I noticed that most photographers get bogged down in the editing. And when I saw them editing, I just sat back and let them do their thing and just kind of took notes. And I saw that they were really bad and inefficient and basically had no consistent process from job to job. And so, yeah, I think this is a topic well worth talking about. And even though I'm mostly talking photos, you do way more video work than I do. So I'm sure you still have to go through footage and choose what to keep and choose what to delete and stuff. So,
well, the pro tip for culling is if everything you shoot is immaculate and the final product, then you don't have to cull anything. Yeah. Right?
True. So that is actually an interesting. We'll start with that because there are definitely things where I need to open up a Lightroom catalog, like a wedding, and there are definitely things where I go, nope, that's the photo. I only need one photo, and then so I go into Bridge and I open up that one photo, and that's it. I don't need anything else from that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it takes me a while to get that one photo, but once I get that one photo, we're solid.
Yeah. Unfortunately, real life doesn't work like that too often. And generally you have tons of either hundreds or thousands of photos and dozens of hours of video you have to comb through to try to make something good out of it. Yeah, and it can get kind of tricky. So
just so we don't have to overgeneralize everything, I think it'd be good to pick and kind of talk in terms of a single style of photography. Sure. But whether you are shooting landscape or nature or weddings or portraits, I think all of these things are still applicable. So we don't say the good photo and the photo that is less good with a detriment, So because I'm a portrait photographer, I'm basically gonna just take a sample family portrait session and kind of use that as my example, but this totally works for whatever. And then what since you're gonna talk a little bit more about video, what kind of video project is kind of a standard thing that's pretty easy to walk people through? No video is standard. That's the issue.
Yeah, that's the problem, is no video is standard. I would say the most standard construction of a video that I do, often for corporate or commercial work, is you're talking about some thing or event, and it's usually one person who is both on camera and also the narrator, and then you've got B-roll on top of them. So you shoot them as a talking head. You use part of that footage, but then you overlay their voiceover with B-roll related to the subject. I'm not really sure what that would be called.
Let's just use an example of a product explainer video.
Yeah, like a product explainer video.
Because I think that has all the components that can then go out into any kind of video, whether you're doing a music video or a corporate or a wedding video for that matter.
Definitely. Yeah, so a product explainer video is what we'll go with for this, but widely applicable.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and dive in and kind of give it a start on my process. Feel free to ask questions along the way,
Sure.
as we go. So I shoot all my photos. The very first thing I do is plug them in, make sure everything gets backed up, backup, backup, backup. Backups are super important. Always have a backup.
Oh yeah. Yeah, a lot of people just lost data on their Western Digital MyBook Lives, and they're probably really upset right now. So
Yeah.
back up.
Actually, now that I think about it, we will put the link to my Backblaze link, which I believe gets you like a free month or something tacked onto your
Yes.
account.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, not that we are sponsored by them, just we both use Backblaze, so you get a free thing and I get a free thing if you sign up with that link. So that's down in the description. But yeah, so I back up all my photos, I get them all transferred. As I talked about before, like if I am shooting a pinup, I generally don't, use the Lightroom catalog, because I know for my pinup calendar, there's only one finished photo. By the way, pinup calendars now on Kickstarter, galacticpinups.com. If you're listening to this when the Kickstarter is over, that page will redirect to a sales page when they're available. But yeah, so when I'm shooting something that is a lot quicker or smaller or more editorial, like you said, if everything you shot was amazing and you don't have to cull, then it's like, okay, so I shoot and then I just kind of hit a point where I go, yeah, that's the photo, that's the one we're using in the calendar. And there might be a few others that I edit for like behind the scenes or social media, but like that's the one we're going for. I don't need a whole culling process and Lightroom catalog for that. We're done. But for, let's just say, family portrait, so I'll get the Lightroom catalog set up, hopefully the day that I shoot it, because Lightroom is weird and it takes a long time to render all of your previews, so then I like go to sleep or get dinner or something else. And so it starts with just like, let the software churn. That is step number one,
For sure.
But once you actually get into the culling process, the very first thing I do is immediately click on all of my rejects. If the flash didn't fire and that photo is not usable, it's a reject. If it's a photo of my shoes, it's a reject. If they are just insanely blurry, like if they're a little bit blurry, it won't be a reject at this stage. But if it's like, wow, you definitely shot on like the Space Needle behind them and not them,
If you
it's
don't
a
have
reject.
to, if you like at a glance can see that
Yeah.
it's blurry, then it's reject. Yeah.
If it's like focus on their ears rather than their eyes, depending if it's an up close photo, reject. If it's a far away photo, the landscape might save it. So it's just kind of like a quick, super quick. So I just go through and immediately just kind of pick all my rejects. And then when I'm done, I generally wait until the end stage, but when I'm done, what I'll do is I'll filter, just show my rejects and delete them. I know we talked about, do you delete photos of like, yes, my rejects are rejects for a reason. I don't need to store them anymore. So that's the kind of first pass that I do just to get rid of the fluff. So, I used to read Scott Kelby's books, and I know one of the things that he did in one of his books was, here is a tear sheet. Here's a tear sheet of a portrait session, so you can see that I don't get it on the first take like I do in the courses of like, it takes a while. But then what he said in the like little intro explainer is like, actually it's an edited tear sheet. It is a tear sheet, but I got rid of all of the times where someone blinked and the flash didn't fire and like the camera didn't focus. So like, it's a thing. It happens to everyone on every level. Yeah, so from there we've got you've gotten rid of all your rejects. Everything else is kind of basic level. The next thing that needs to happen is you need to label your photos, and you need to decide for you what those labels mean. So for everyone, this will be a little bit different, but for me personally, a 1-star photo has a meaning, a 2-star photo has a meaning, 3 and 4 and 5, those all have meanings. So a 2-star photo, a photo must be 2 stars for me to show it to a client. That's my level. So then what I'll do is, now that I've actually like just straight up gotten rid of the trash, I very quickly at a glance, and actually I kind of do this while pass number 1, I'm doing this and getting rid of the trash. If a photo is okay, it gets a star. If a photo is just bad, it gets no star, but it doesn't get deleted unless it's like a mistake. If it's a bad photo, but like, then I just leave it. If there's a bunch in a row that I don't feel like looking at, they just all get a star. I'll come back and pick between them later type thing. So then I just kind of go through really quickly. So pass number 1, I'm getting all of my 1 stars, my 0 stars, my rejects. My rejects get deleted, and my 0 stars are just there for posterity, or if I decide that like, oh, I missed something and I need to go back and find them. And then what I'll do is I will change all of those 1 stars into 2 star photos and do a second pass through. And this time what I'm doing is I am culling out and actually choosing like the best photo with a more critical eye. So that first pass for a 300 picture portrait session might take me 3 to 5 minutes. This is not a long process. For a wedding, that first pass might take me 30 minutes. Like I'm super quickly just kind of going through and deleting all these. Pass number 2 is just like, is it a good photo? If there are 4 photos of a close-up of the person's face and they're just chin and stuff is slightly variated, if it's one worth showing the client, it stays 2 stars. Otherwise it goes 1 star and disappears from my view because I have the filter set. So I will show clients multiple angles and kind of let them choose, unless there's one angle where like, oh, they have a double chin in that one. They objectively do not look as good from a photographer's eye as they do here. Part of it is you don't know what they think about themselves, but the other part of it is you're the professional and you need to know what's best for your client. So, yeah, pass number 2 is kind of going through with a more critical eye. And the things that I'm looking for are like, is it flattering? Is the lighting good? Is the posing good? And kind of all of the things. But I don't go through these all one by one. I will use the loop grid view in Lightroom to show them all on screen at the same time. And so when you're showing them all on screen at the same time, you can quickly see your set of 6 or 8 photos and say, those 3 are the best ones. Get rid of the other ones. And now when you show your clients are only seeing those top 3 of the 6 you originally took. And then of those 3, they'll say, oh, I actually like that one. So sometimes if I look at the set and I go, these are still too many photos, then I will do another pass through. But if I look at the set and I go, no, there's enough variation here, there aren't too many duplicates of anything, then that's it. That's the full culling process. So I really only go up to 0 stars, never get seen but don't get deleted. 1 stars are kind of my placeholders for the first pass of culling. 2 stars are ones that I'm willing to show a client unless I decide that's just too many photos for whatever the shoot is. For a wedding, I'm looking for 800 to 1,000. For a portrait session, it might be 40, it might be 100. But like if I go into a portrait session and I have 200 photos, I'm like, there's too many here. I need to keep going. Like too many duplicates. And that's it. That's basically just looking at all of the photos in chunks and groups. Because if you go one by one and compare, well, is it photo A better than photo B? I don't know. Photo A, photo B. I'm like, why are you looking at those? The best one is photo H. Like, you need to see them all next to each other so you can very quickly go, oh, that whole set is not as good as this whole set, and they're too identical to show both. Yeah, that was a long thing.
That's the process.
That's the process. My star ratings for 4 and 5 stars vary slightly depending on what the job is, but that basically means that the client has selected it or ordered it or printed it in some fashion. So a family portrait shoot has a slightly different thing than a wedding shoot. But yeah, if a client selects that are actually ordering and buying things are going to be 3, 4, and 5 stars. 3 stars are all of my small prints, like 8x10s. 4 and 5 stars are more specific. But then I also have a notepad file of like, hey, for this job, all the 4 stars are going to be their 16x20s, and all of their 5 stars are like album cover type thing, or whatever it is. So those have attributed meaning, so that way I can very quickly actually look, because I think a lot of photographers just kind of look and go, oh yeah, I mean, like, I think that's a 5-star image, it might be a 4-star image, I'm not sure if it's quite as good as this other one, so maybe it's a 4-star. I'm like, no, it needs to have a meaning, otherwise it's just some random arbitrary scale. So
All
yeah,
right.
that's how I cull and work my way through. So I can do a portrait session in like an hour or two, and I can do a wedding in like a day, not including the album.
All right. Culling in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. My process is probably going to sound a lot less precise and less detailed than that, but I will do my best to follow it up for video. As you stated, kind of every video is different, but following this rough product explainer kind of video idea, a lot of the culling actually is much easier if you are organized throughout the whole process.
Very true.
With a talking head, culling is incredibly easy if they already know what they're going to say ahead of time, and there's a script, and I mean, heck, maybe they're even using a teleprompter. That makes things very simple. That is what the clapper is for. That's what those boards are for. Sometimes you see there's stuff that's written on them. Well, that is to help editors, basically. One, to give them a sync point for audio. But even if not, it gives them a place where they can see visually on the screen what shot it is, and potentially how it's organized in the timeline of shots for the final product. So I would definitely encourage something like that if you have that kind of structure in place ahead of time. Is use something like that, even if it's low budget. You're holding up a piece of paper, or maybe you're even just saying, like, oh, this is the end of a shot, or this is the beginning of another, and you're just like covering the camera with your hand to give you a visual indication of where different points are. I would also take copious notes during the shooting day. You might see something where you're like, that was a great soundbite, like I want that. Maybe that's going to be like an intro, or maybe that's going to be an end clip, or this is really good, or this is really bad, throw this out. We decided not to go with this shot. You can get rid of this right away. Make notes roughly in the timeline as you're shooting things, and give yourself as much of a hand ahead of time as you possibly can, because once you're in the editing bay, so to speak, and you're editing, you're going to forget all of that stuff, and you're going to be like, what was this? Like, when did we do this thing? When did they say that? I remember they said something really good, but I can't remember where in this hour of video that it was. That's just a hassle to watch all the way through and try to figure that out.
If you don't take really good notes, I know from experience, if you don't take really good notes, what happens is you now have to watch all of it again, and you have to relive all of that shooting time, and you don't have to do that.
Yep. Definitely help yourself out. Embarrassingly, I've done this before where I haven't taken notes, so I have to watch the whole thing through. And because I've shot it, I kind of vaguely know what's going on, so my brain wanders, and sometimes I look at another thing on another monitor, and then I totally miss the thing that I was trying to listen for, and I have to listen to it back again. It's just a huge waste of time. So
that happens with me when I'm editing the podcast and the dog barks, and I have to go edit out like the yap, and I'm like, I think I know what we were talking about when that happened.
Yep, exactly. So help yourself out and make notes and try to give yourself visual cues. Whatever you can do to make it easier on yourself is better. Sometimes if there's just total failures, then you can delete you can delete that stuff in camera. If you're just like, that didn't work, we are reshooting this immediately. You can get rid of that stuff, like, as much as you can, to cut down the watching through your footage takes so long, and the more that you can cut that out, the easier and faster it is. So you might want to actually delete stuff on site. Again, be careful that you're only deleting stuff that's that is what you actually want to delete, but you should consider that as well, just to reduce the amount of data you have to deal with. Once everything's shot and you're in the editing bay, generally, so if I'm shooting something like this where it's a talking head and then B-roll later, sometimes I'll have the B-roll ahead of time, sometimes I won't. If I have time that I can go through one stage or the other ahead of time before shooting the rest, I will certainly take advantage of that. Like, if you've got the talking head ahead of time and you can start building or refining a shot list of, okay, here are the things that we have already. Even if you shot some of the B-roll already, you're like, oh, this is stuff that I want to fill in. And
Here's
try
the
to
things
edit.
you mentioned, or
Yeah.
here's an awkward transition
Exactly.
that you need a B-roll piece of coverage to
that you
fit
need
over.
to hide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try to basically, I would say, like, try to edit your video together as soon as you possibly can with whatever footage you have available that's shot at the time, because the closer you are to a finished product, the more precise you can get with shots that you're filling it in. And then you can waste less time by just going, if you're going to go shoot a product and you want somebody using it, you want it, you want different shots, you want it, like, let's say it's like a household product, you want different shots of it in a house, you want those kind of in environment pieces. The more that you want to show ahead of time, the less duplicate or unnecessary shots that you're getting. So
It's the storyboard versus the shotgun.
Exactly. Edit early and often, so you're storyboarding more. And hopefully, right, in a perfect world, you've got an existing storyboard and you know exactly what you want to shoot. But sometimes, even if you have one, you get into editing and you're like, this doesn't really work. Like, this looks weird, or this feels strange, or the pacing of this is
off.
off.
On set you have an idea.
Or on set you have an idea, and things change, and that's great. That's part of what's cool about the process. But yeah, that as close as you can get to a storyboard as possible, as soon as possible, is great. And then it's unfortunately down to the very boring answer of, you need to watch it through and pick out the best stuff. Like, if all else fails, and your organization fails, and you don't have a great storyboard, so to speak, even if that's a storyboard that's built as part of the process, you just have to watch it through. And it's better to focus and watch it through once, and use your tools in Premiere to mark ins and outs of clips. You learn your keyboard shortcuts so that you can just walk through and just tap a key, tap another key, tap a key to split it out. Like, learn those things. That will save so much time than manually clicking it. It'll be much faster. You can watch it through in basically a single shot and get all of the shots that you want out of it that are good. Yeah, that's what I would say is, like, for culling, especially in video, learn your keyboard shortcuts now. It is going to pay off potentially literally hours and hours of time very quickly if you do so. So yeah, watch it through, use keyboard shortcuts, edit early and often. Don't wait until you have what you think is all of the footage before you edit. Edit immediately after you have something. Even if that's just to cut out good clips, and they're not in a timeline, they're not in an organizational form yet, but they're just thrown out, and those are good clips, and you can start forming the product. So as soon as you have something remotely viable to throw up there and to watch and to start editing, I would do that. That will really accelerate things. But yeah, ultimately every video is different and things change. But those are the things that I would do. Early and often organization in all forms, and early and often editing is the best way to go about it. It pays dividends later. The worst thing in the world is to think that you have everything you need and to cut it together and you're missing something, or something's wrong, or something isn't paced right, and then you have to go out and go to the huge expense and time, expense both in money and time rather, to add more stuff to it. So try to avoid that.
I mean,
if
that
at all possible.
never happens in Hollywood.
Yeah, never. Reshoots
Never,
are
ever.
never a thing. But yeah, that's a good point though. Reshoots do happen. It is unfortunate when they happen. It takes a lot of time, but even Hollywood has to do it sometimes. It seems like an increasing amount of time. Maybe we're just hearing about it more these days, but they do happen. Try to avoid it though.
I think what's happening more in Hollywood is there rather than a director having a vision, they're trying to tailor it a lot more towards, like, well, this didn't test well, so let's change it.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of modem in Hollywood is slightly adding more to the reshoot.
Yeah, testing is killing Hollywood. Like, believe in your vision, director and or writer. Like, why do you have to find some random people that don't know anything and don't have a good idea of your vision and decide that they have
Although not every
over what
original is good. There's
well,
that
that's true. I'm just saying, like, stand up for your creative vision. It's okay.
Hey, but I do have a question for you. So when I'm working with photos. Let's assume a reshoot is not possible. Like you do a wedding, you're not getting a reshoot, right?
Yeah.
You have time with an executive, you don't get that time back. You spend 4 hours setting up a bunch of Warhammer minis. We're not doing that again. So you have the shot that you have. Now, when you're doing a product, there's not as much like emotion or something to it. So more like people, right?
Yeah.
But in the order of importance of like if you have one photo where like the emotion in the moment or like someone's smile is there but it's like slightly imperfect, I'm like, oh, I'm definitely taking this one over the other one. Versus if there are two that are both kind of and one is technically better, I just throw out the other one and I show the one that's technically better. So there are like I'm always going for like what's the one that's technically the best, what's the one that's like the sharpest and the nicest or like has the best lighting or something, if they're those kind of things. But then there's always that trump card of this one has more emotion or just kind of a visceral resonance to it that is worth that overcomes the technical flaws in the photo.
For sure.
Is there anything in video where like yeah, this one might have a bad sound thing, yeah, this one might have been slightly out of focus, yeah, there's this or that, what are the things in video that are deal breakers for you of nope, it doesn't matter how good it is, that part's wrong, I don't do it, versus oh, if this is so good I can look past those other technical limitations, because that happens to me more than I'd like to admit.
Yeah. I would say the answer to that is yes. That is definitely a factor. I would say bad audio is rarely acceptable. Like I will only, if something's slightly out of focus or not technically framed perfectly and it's a little screwy, I'm okay with that for the most part. Ideally everything's perfect, but bad audio is nigh unwatchable in almost every instance. I will only use bad audio if I would call it like moderately bad. Truly bad audio is a deal breaker. Like if you can't really understand what's going on, if the audio is like painful to listen to, perhaps literally, that's a deal breaker no matter how pretty it looks and how nice everything turned out. I'll take a less technically perfect shot if at all possible. But what I look for is probably similar stuff to photo. Like genuine emotion is killer for video projects. People being excited and engaged and magnetic, right? Like people that are interesting to listen to, interesting to watch, or have great stories or have great sound bites, like stuff that really reaches out and grabs you. And unfortunately some of that stuff is hard for me to just say like this is the thing you should watch for, because it's one of those when you see it situations. Like I know that's good, like I know that's emotionally impactful. Or often genuine humor, if you find that and you're like, this is funny, that this is something that I want to include, this joke, maybe it's at the end, maybe it's almost like a blooper at the end of a video, like a irreverent kind of thing to leave the audience with on a positive note. I'll look for that kind of stuff. But yeah, real genuine emotions of all forms is like the top of the list, even if there are technical issues. Failing that, if it looks and sounds good, even if it's not as emotionally impactful, cool. I'll take sound good over look good. So yeah, emotions, sound good, look okay, look great, sound okay, and then throw away anything that sounds bad and is therefore unwatchable, even if it looks amazing, is how I structure that stuff. So, but yeah,
although
emotions is the whole thing.
I will say, as long as it's not an A clip, if it's a B clip, you're like, okay, just throw away the audio.
Throw away the audio. Yeah, for B-roll, unless sound is part of the experience of the product or the thing you're trying to explain, with B-roll, who cares? Throw the sound away. Yep. Like B-roll is all visual, like all technical perfection. But yeah, as far as A-roll of a person speaking, it's all about emotion. B-roll is essentially all technical perfection. Yeah, just follow down those four things and throw away anything with horrible audio, and especially throw away things that look bad and sound bad, because what's the point?
That's true.
So that's how I call it. Basically, do yourself a favor and organize often and stay on top of it and take notes. It seems like more in the moment, and it seems like an extra hassle that you don't want to deal with, but oh boy, it will save, I mean, no kidding, hours and hours and hours of editing time, like for real, potentially even dozens of hours on like a big project.
One thing you can do with photo that you can't do with video is I can look at 10, 20 photos all at the same time, and in an instant go, yeah, it's number 17. That's the one we're going with. Where versus you have to watch 20 clips.
Yeah, and you can watch it fast forwarded, you know, at a faster clip. I will do that sometimes for B-roll where I don't care about the audio anyway. So like, yeah, watch it accelerated. Although sometimes it's hard to tell, right? Because focus can shift pretty quickly. Yep. And so often you are forced to watch it at its original speed to get an exact idea of how that shot looks. And while you edit, you're watching
it multiple times too.
Yeah. I mean, by the time you finish a video edit, like you've watched that video 50 times. Like I said, yeah, it's like infinite rewatching. But you try to reduce it as much as possible. So yeah, that's how I go about culling a video. It's kind of a messy process, but videos are messy.
Yes, they are. Yeah, so I think kind of the most important takeaways here, too long, didn't listen. Most important takeaways for video are take notes, do yourself a favor, so when you get to the culling, you kind of already know where the good stuff is, if you're the one shooting it. And if you're not the one shooting it, make sure the one who is shooting it takes notes, or charge them more. Either way. And if you're doing photos, really it's batch cull. Don't go photo by photo and judge a photo on its own merits. Judge a photo compared to all of the photos next to it. If you're not looking at, 8 to 10 photos on a screen at a time and judging them that way, it's just going to take you 10 times longer, because now you're doing it like with video and looking at it one at a time and going, is this any good? Well, I don't know. Look at it, those 8. Oh, number 6. It's that one. So, oh yeah. And your labels, make sure your labels mean something. So they're not just like completely arbitrary. I think that's the other big one.
Yeah. Your labels need a level of organization as well. If you're just randomly scribbling on
otherwise you'll come back and be like, cool, these are blue. What does blue mean? Why did I make them blue?
That's for you to find out many, many hours later, unfortunately.
So that's our episode this week. We are trying to do some more of this tutorialized content. We do hope that you did enjoy it. Be sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends, all of that jazz, and we will see you or hear you. No, you're not talking. You can hear us.
We'll see your comments next time.
If you have questions or ideas for future episodes, you can email us at hello@photo-op.show.
Watch us on Ben's YouTube channel at NomCreative.
As in Om Nom Nom.
Share this with a friend, and you can listen to Photo Op anywhere podcasts are sold.
Or download it. 'Cause it's free.